Welcome to the Power of Owning Your Career podcast. I'm your host, Simone Morris, and I have a passion for empowering others to take responsibility for their careers. Yes, I've written several books on owning your career and am loving hosting this podcast. This podcast is for you if you're willing to make a shift to the driver's seat in your career. We feature leaders who inspire, empower, and motivate you for consistent career action for results. Please continue to join us every Sunday when a new episode is released. Let's get into this week's show. Welcome to this week's episode of the Power of Owning Your Career podcast. I am super excited about today because I'm fangirling everybody. I have been watching Dawn Kelly's career for a while on social media. I feel like I know her because that's how social media is. Anyway, she is our guest today on the Power of Owning Your Career podcast. I can't talk today, everybody. Let's jump right into the show. Dawn, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Simone, for inviting me to join you here today.
All right, awesome. Well, I know that you're an entrepreneur. I know about the Nourish Spot. I know about the US Open and all the fabulous things, and you're associated with the Goldman Sachs program. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're currently doing, though.
Well, first, let me just say thank you once again. Today I sit before you as an entrepreneur. I opened the Nourish Spot, a fresh and healthy food and beverage brand, back in September 2017. And we just walked into our 7th year of doing business. And I'm really, really proud of what myself and my children have been able to accomplish with this new goal of this new passion of mine. But before becoming an entrepreneur, I spent in excess of 30 years as a public relations executive in the nonprofit environment, in the school environment, I would say education environment, as well as the financial services environment. So I come to you today as a PR maven turned entrepreneur.
I love it. Well, that means you've got a lot to say. I believe you're in the driver's seat. Everybody, you know, this show is about being in the driver's seat, being intentional with your career, hands on the wheel, having input into the outcomes that happen in your career. So, Dawn, tell us about the journey to the driver's seat. When did you realize that you were in the driver's seat for your career?
Oh, I realized that very early on, when I was really just getting out of college. I realized, and college meaning I graduated from Howard University in Washington, D.C., and I had already been an intern with an organization called AARP. And so I had been working with them as an intern, and I was starting kind of like to figure out, what I wanted to do next with my training, right? Because you go to college to learn the theory and then you get out in the world to actually put that theory into action. And so I realized I was in the driver's seat when I was hired by AARP. And after working there for about 2 years, I decided I did not want to be an assistant because that's what I was hired initially to do. I wanted to bring all of my education and training to bear, and I wanted to feed a passion of mine. And that passion was writing, persuading people. And so I was able to put all those things together in a role as assistant media liaison for AARP. Once I tossed my hat in the ring and realized that I did have enough education and training to get me a role like that.
It is unusual for a lot of people once they graduate from college to feel like, because you can feel like I got this degree, but that is wonderful. Based on that experience and also your experience in the corporate space, nonprofit, entrepreneurship, let's jump right to the chase. So, what do you think are the key ingredients necessary for successfully owning your career?
Oh my gosh, there's a couple of things. So one is being reflective and being honest and taking a true stock and assessment of what you bring to the table. What are your attributes, right? What are your skills? What are those things that you do without thinking? What are those things that you do um, what are those things that you would do and you weren't even getting paid for, right? So that's the first and foremost. Take stock, do an assessment of who you are and what you bring to the table. Another thing is to align, to figure out what companies and their cultural values, right, actually align with your goals, right? Because you
Mm,
don't really want to go working for companies that you're against what they do, right?
mm,
You can't stand up in their brand, right? So that's the other thing I think that it's important to take a list, make a list of the companies and the causes that you would want to be attached to, so
mhm,
that you're in the driver's seat in terms of picking out where you want to bring your capabilities to bear, right?
mhm.
Um, I think because I'm a little older, I'm a seasoned OG. I would tell you guys that I'm in my sixth decade. And so, what another thing that I learned over the years is that you know we always think it's who you know, right? But it's not who you know, it's who knows you and who
Mm,
will vouch for you. So the other thing is be careful about the relationship that you make or break, right? Because oftentimes it's the people that you know and that you have cultivated reciprocal relationships with that will often be beneficial to you when you jump in that driver's seat and you decide which way you want to turn.
mm. Relationships are so key. I love that you touch upon careful about the ones that you break. Do you have a story that comes to mind about breaking a relationship and how that impacted your career?
Well, not necessarily about breaking. I have more so stories about cultivating. So
Okay.
here's one in particular. So when I went to work at AARP in Washington, D.C., and actually I started there in 1985. Some of you weren't even thought about at that time, right? Uh, so in 1985, I started working at AARP as an assistant. But by 1992, I was doing assistant media liaison work, right? And I had been doing some stuff before that, but that was my title in 1992. And I would tell you that I made a lot of friends at AARP, Kevin Donnellan, who's still there at AARP, and another gentleman by the name of Bob DiFilippo. And I cultivated those relationships. I learned from those gentlemen. Okay. If I didn't know how to do something, I was quick to call upon them to ask them to teach me or show me. And so when Bob DiFilippo left AARP, he went to Prudential Financial and he became the chief communications officer there. I would tell you this, Simone, I never lost sight of those gentlemen. Okay. I'm very proud of the connections that I have cultivated over my 30 plus year history. And so Bob went to Prudential. I left AARP, returned home to New York City, where I'm born and raised, and I got a job at York College. While at York College, I stayed in contact with Bob DiFilippo, who was at Prudential. In 1999, I decided I wanted something new to do. Ran into Bob DiFilippo at a PRSA event, and I got a job at Prudential and worked there for nearly 20 years. So that is a story about cultivating relationships. You just never know where the people that you formerly worked with or for will end up, right? You
Mhm.
never know what your career trajectory might be, right? And what state or country you might end up in. So, the one thing that I would really, really encourage anyone that's listening under the sound of my voice, protect your relationships, cultivate your relationships. make people feel important and necessary, and make sure you say thank you. And
Mm,
so I have always been thankful and grateful for to those that have been instrumental in my career journey. And even those that taught me what not to do, right? Because you run into some of those people too, right? So
mhm.
I'm even grateful to the people that have taught me what not to do as well.
Mm, well said. Can you share with us any resources that helped you learn how to cultivate? Because when I think about cultivate, I think about a plant and watering it and putting some fertilizer and nutrients to get the plant to grow. And then that's what comes up for me when you say cultivate. So
And
help us.
and you would be absolutely correct, because that's exactly where I'm going to go. Um, I don't really have any books that I would tell you. Like there's one, Terry Williams, who was one of my mentors as I was growing up in the PR business. Right, she
Mhm.
told me to read a book called Everything I Need to Know I Learned in Kindergarten. Okay,
Mm,
and I would tell you that that book still resonates today because it talks about manners, please, and thank you. And those things go a really long way. You just never know. I mean, most people don't say thank you, most people don't say please. And so those things actually put you ahead of other people that just take stuff for granted.
mm,
Another book. Another book that Terry told me to read and I read, and these are old books, right? Older books, seasoned literature, but they still ring true today. It's her book, The Personal Touch. Okay. It talks about how um, uh, being uh, front and center, right? Being touchable, right? Being relatable, approachable. Those are the things that sear you into somebody's mind.
mhm,
Caring about others. So here's something like you say today, you tell me that you love flowers, right? And that's the thing that makes you happy. So if I'm trying to cultivate a relationship with you, every once in a while, if I see a good article about flowers, I would send it to you. Or if I heard about a big flower show coming to the Jacob Javits Center, I would reach out to you and say, hey, Simone, did you hear about the new flower show coming to Jacob Javits? Hey, would you like to go? Right? So those are the ways in which you cultivate relationships with people. And these, sometimes people say, oh, that seems like you're being underhanded. No, because honestly, all relationships, business relationships, personal relationships, family relationships, they start with acknowledging the things that make the other person happy, right?
mm,
What makes the other person's boat float? And if
mm,
you can figure that out and do your best to stroke that and to make that person happy around those issues that are important to them, then they will be your biggest and most ardent cheerleaders, and they're people that will do for you when you need help. And so I would tell you that when I needed assistance back in the day when I was at Prudential, I could call on Terry and get anything I needed from her.
mm. Terry, I hope you're listening. We're going to highlight that book in the show notes for this episode. So tell us about the pivot to entrepreneurship and what went on for you where you decided, okay, I've had this illustrious career, 20 years, you mentioned last at Prudential, and then you decide to be an entrepreneur. So tell us about that and what the sticking power was for you to stay in the game as an entrepreneur.
Well, I would tell you that now I see it as a godsend, but in September 20, let me get it right. Yes, in September of 2015, I went to work and I was called onto the sixth floor. Now, I had been at the company long enough to know when you get called to the sixth floor, big changes are happening. Now, it could
Mm,
be good ones for you, or it could be, something different. And so that day I went to that room and they told me that my role was being eliminated and that they were going to be doing something different. I would tell you that I was destroyed because I loved the work that I did at that former financial services firm. Um, I know for a fact that I left there a legacy, a great legacy of good work. But then after that happening to me, I went home and I decided that I didn't really want to put my livelihood in the hands of anyone else ever again, because the gentleman that delivered that news to me just seemed a little bit too flippant and a little bit too happy to tell me that he was taking my livelihood away. And so what I decided to do was pray, right? And pray fervently, because I didn't know what to do next. I was already on my own health journey, because I'm sure you know, when you work in corporate environments and also when you work for yourself, especially in a career like communications, marketing, and PR. Oftentimes you have late nights, early mornings. Sometimes you don't eat right. And so my health had suffered. I was drinking socially, I was not eating, I wasn't sleeping. You're supposed to get that 8 hours. People don't know, but sleep is really revolutionary. It can help you with your weight gain. Okay. You need to get 8 hours sleep. And so I wasn't doing any of that, because we were like an internal PR shop. So my actual customers were international. So, people be calling me from Japan at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I would have to get up and answer the phone. You know what I mean? And so that was very challenging. So when I was leaving that company, um, I was a size 16, and my ankles were suffering and my doctors were threatening all kind of medicine. And I'm not a person that likes that kind of stuff. And so I decided to go on my own health journey, because I'm an athlete, right? I grew up playing softball and gymnastics and track and field. So, I know what you're supposed to do to get healthy. So I stopped eating bagels. I
Oh, gosh.
stopped I stopped drinking Pepsi, right? I started getting my 8 hours of sleep every day. And let me say that again. Stop drinking carbonated soda. Stop. Um, I started sleeping my 8 hours a day. I bought Fitbits and was walking 10,000 steps a day. So much so that if I didn't make those 10,000 steps outside while I was at work and commuting back and forth, I would get home to my home, go in my basement, and I would do marching steps until I got that 10,000 steps, because I was committed to my health, right? Because health is wealth. And so that is what led me to establish the Nourish Spot, because in my community, which is considered a food desert, we didn't have a lot of access to good, fresh, healthy fruits and vegetables. The supermarkets here are kind of lacking, right? They don't have a wide variety, and the prices are crazy, right? I don't want to say anything here, but I think that that might be a little discriminatory, right? Because the prices are out of this world. And so I would find myself outside of my community, foraging for fruits and vegetables, foraging for a good salad. And I would often find myself at Panera, right? Which is miles and miles away from where I live. And I wasn't happy there either, because the choices were what they wanted you to have. It wasn't what you wanted to have. So one day I was watching a story on TV, saw Styles P talking about his new juice bar in Westchester. And I would tell you, I was just intrigued. And in my prayers, I asked God, is that something that I could do? And I was led to a space that had an old awning that said DK Upholstery. Simone, my name is Dawn Kelly. I got that place from the landlord, and the Nourish Spot was born there and is still going strong in that place today.
What a sign. I've got goosebumps as an entrepreneur, just the inspiration behind that story. That's amazing, Dawn. I'm so excited for you. Do you think that your formula for owning your career changes as an entrepreneur versus inside an organization working for someone else?
No, I would say no, I don't. Because I'm a very now, now that I'm an entrepreneur, I realized that I had a very entrepreneurial
Mhm.
spirit when I was working in corporate America, right? And I'm a very self like trying to think of the word like initiative, right? No one ever had to tell me what to do, right? I
Mhm.
don't care when I was assistant, when I moved up to be an assistant media liaison, all the way to my big job, department vice president of global communications, right? No one had to tell me what to do. I knew what needed to be done and I got it done, right?
Mhm.
I took
Mhm.
initiative, right? I also am a very big idea generator. Like I don't know what it is and I thank God for it, but I get these crazy, grandiose ideas all the time. And I was just thankful and grateful that I had a wonderful team at the financial services firm to help me bring those ideas to life. And I would say that even now, as an entrepreneur, I'm still an idea generator, but I have just found different avenues and different lanes in order to bring those ideas to life. I serve as a member of the foundation board for York College, which is a 4-year college of the City University of New York. And that's strategic, right? I used to work there and now I'm on their board. And I'm on their board because I care about the school, because it is an anchor institution in the community where the Nourish Spot is established. And so this makes for me one to cultivate relationships,
Mhm.
two to get possible orders, catering orders, right? Three to meet people. So I think that is what happens is we just take the sum total of all that we learn, and then we help that if you're smart, and then we use the sum total of all that we learn to move us forward.
Mm. If you were to write a book, I made up a title in my head, but let me run this by you. If you were to write a book about your career body of work, what would the title be?
I've been thinking about that. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. You know, one is far fetched. I'm gonna tell you, far
What's
fetched.
far-fetched?
I will tell you. So growing up, and I'm just gonna be vulnerable here. Growing up, I'm the firstborn, and I wasn't always the smartest kid. I made a lot of mistakes growing up. I'm not sure that my parents thought that I was gonna amount to a whole lot of anything. I'll be honest. Okay. Because I got in a lot of trouble. This mouth that loves to talk would get me in a lot of trouble. But my parents are my mother was a praying woman, and I also learned how to pray, and I think I turned out all right.
Yes, you did.
Right? So so I think the far fetched would just be because I'm a young inner city girl, right? I grew up in the streets of New York City, and for most of us, and this, for most of us, they don't think that we're going to amount to anything. They believe that we're going to be the least of us, right? But no matter what obstacles were put in my way, either by the world or stupid stuff that I did, God prevailed and pushed me forward. And today I stand in front of you as a very proud 60-something-year-old woman that has accomplished many, many goals. And I would tell you that I have more to accomplish, and I'm raring and ready to get them done.
Mm, I'm inspired. I'm going to tell you what was in my head as I think
Okay.
about the conversations we've had. So
Okay.
the title that was in my head was The Power of Relationships, or
I like,
something around cultivating relationships, just your passion, something around passion for the power of relationships is what actually popped up for me.
I
But
like that too. So maybe there's two books. Maybe there's like a novelish one,
yeah,
and then there's a how-to one.
yeah.
Because I do believe, Simone, that I really have learned how to maximize relationships with others. And in maximizing my relationships with others, I leave them feeling great, right? So it's
Mm.
not just transactional, right? It's not about, oh, Dawn needed this. No. It's all about, you want to help me because of all the things that you've seen me do, right? Just for the world at large, as well as knowledge of things that I've done for you or a friend or a friend's kid or something like that. Because I think it's important. Together we rise, right? You know, what's that old saying? There's a saying about if you want to go far, if you want to go fast, you go alone. But if you want to go far, we go together. So
Yeah, I
I
love that.
love, I want to go far, and I know you can't do it all by yourself. I've learned that. You cannot, there's nothing in this world, short of maybe going to the bathroom, that you can't do that you should do by yourself. It's better together.
Yeah, I love that. So much career gems that you're sharing with us. Tell us about risk. We're going to start to wrap up, but I'm curious about risk because you've taken some big risk in your career. So how do you see risk, and what would you say to our audience who want to learn how to embrace more risk in their careers?
One, I say take risk, right? Take educated risk, but take risk, because I'm gonna tell you this. If you don't take the risk, then you're gonna be sitting around regretting. And
Mm,
you don't want, the regrets are awful. They're just awful, right? That coulda, woulda, shoulda, if I
mm,
had, you don't want to have those conversations with yourself. You just don't, okay?
mhm,
You definitely don't want to have them with others, but you definitely don't want to have those conversations with yourself. So I say, write down a list of pros and cons, right? Write down, and then go through those lists, right? And things that are really, especially on the cons list, things that are really troubling. If you can't get past them, then that may be something that you don't do, right?
mhm,
But for the most part, um, the way I look at risk is, why not me? Right? Why not? Why not? If you don't give yourself a chance, you will never know. So I think that I've learned how to look at failure different too, right? So I
mhm,
think that's the thing. Risk and failure. People are afraid of risk because they're afraid to fail, right?
mm,
But the thing is, I realize, especially as an entrepreneur, you never really fail. You
mm,
learn. You
mm,
learn, right? If you don't give up as an entrepreneur, right? Then you never really fail. What you do is you learn, and you're able to apply your
mhm,
learnings to whatever you do next,
mhm,
right? So even if you stay in the business you are in, and something happened and it didn't work out the way you wanted it to, you take those lessons, look at it differently, open your mind, kind of broaden the way you look at things, right? Change the way you look at things, and then go back after it in a different way, and you most likely will get exactly what you need. So I think risk is important and necessary. I think that people are scared of rejection, but
mhm,
rejection, in my opinion, is God's protection. So if you've been
mm,
rejected, welcome it and move on to something else, okay? Because everything isn't for us at this particular time. You might need more time in order to embrace an opportunity, or an action. Um, and so I would say, just be slow, steady, and deliberate.
mm. That's a good title too. I love it. I love it. It's been such an honor to have you on the show. You've shared so many gems. Please tell our listeners how they can stay connected with you.
Oh, wonderful. I want to again say thank you so much for having me on your program. I hope that people will come. Let us nourish them at the Nourish Spot. The Nourish Spot is located at 10705 Guy R. Brewer Boulevard in Jamaica, Queens, New York. If you can't walk up, bike up, skip up, drive up, you can reach out to a Grubhub or DoorDash or Uber Eats. And to reach me, um, reach out to me at PR Maven. That's P as in Paul, R as in Robert, M as in Mary, A as in Apple, V as in Victory, E as in Early, N as in Nancy, 17 @gmail.com, and I will follow up with you. I love people. I collect people. I love to help. I'm always looking for bartering situations. So if I can help you, if you can help me and I can help you, it's a wonderful day.
So when are we going to see you in the supermarket? I feel like, your product's going to show up at some point, maybe in a Whole Foods or something like that. Because if you can't get to Jamaica Queens.
Look, from your mouth to God's ears, we are working on some CPG products right now. Thank you for saying that. We also do catering. So any company out there, because we just finished at the US Open and at Citi Field. So any company out there in New York City, if you are in Long Island, if you're looking to cater some fresh and healthy beverages and food for your staff because you want to show them how much you care, please contact us at The Nourish Spot. You can find us on LinkedIn, The Nourish Spot. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. And as I said earlier, you could give us a call at 718-526-2099. Thank you so much, Simone. I truly, truly, truly appreciate you for giving me this opportunity today.
Absolutely. And thank you for being a guest on the Power of Owning Your Career podcast.
I sincerely hope that you enjoyed this week's empowering career story on the podcast. If you did, I'm going to ask you to do me a favor. Wherever you listen to the podcast, be sure that you are subscribing and that you rate and review the podcast. It's so important as we continue to spread the word of career empowerment. In addition, you can head over to the LinkedIn platform and join the Power of Owning Your Career discussion group. There you can have access to the guests who have been on the podcast, as well as others listening to the podcast, as well as myself, where we can continue the conversation. I hope to see you on that platform. You can also email me at pooyc@simonemorris.com if you have a suggestion for guest or a message that you want me to hear personally. Thanks so much, and make it an inspiring, empowering week in your career.